Good evening everyone, and welcome to Meet the Candidates evening for the Taranaki Regional Council. My name's Brian Vickery. I'm a presenter with NZME, previously a journalist for News Talk ZB, but tonight I'm private citizen Brian Vickery, and I'm delighted and humbled to be the moderator for tonight's meeting. Just the backstory of tonight and the context: it is being organised by Heather Lewis, who last week was profiled in last week's Taranaki Daily News as a strong, staunch supporter of democracy who believes in the need for transparent, open debate. And she really had a passion for the fact that we needed to provide a forum and a medium for the Taranaki Regional Council and aspirants to have a debate about what's dear to the heart, particularly Yarrow Stadium. Heather approached me some time ago. We had 300 people at the New Plymouth District Council's meeting, and I was feeling chuffed, and I thought I'm going to finish on a high, and she asked me would I chair the meeting, and I kind of tried to fob her off. She saw me the following Monday and I said, look Heather, I'll do you a deal. I'll give you an interview or promote the death out of the National Women's Council and all that. She said no, I'm determined. I looked in her eyes, I perceived she was an honest, determined woman. I think it's a laudable thing to promote democracy and want to do the right thing for the TRC. So she has been tenacious, and Heather Lewis, I'm delighted that you've organised this, and I'm happy to be your moderator tonight. Heather's also been authorised by the National Council of Women New Zealand, and she's not only authorised to organise tonight's meeting, bless her, on Wednesday night, at the same time, same venue, Gordon Hudson would be the chair or the moderator of Meet the Candidates for the District Health Board. So I think let's put our hands together for and probably the most important person tonight is the amazing Elaine James on the bell. The most overqualified bell ringer I've ever come across. And you've been involved with the National, it just comes out of your tongue so easily, the National Council of Women of New Zealand.
Yeah, we've been on since Kate Shepherd founded us.
Well, that's pretty amazing. So how cool is that? Yes. All right, now just the dynamics for tonight and the format. The aspirants will come up here and just come and join the table. And I will come and tap you, and if you could come and introduce yourself, you'll have 2 minutes. And like I said, we are being professionally filmed by Mad Media, and we want to acknowledge Edward Ash, and very, very soon he will contact me, and this will go on YouTube. So if you speak well, and you're happy with the way you equip yourself, there's good content there for posterity, and that never does any harm. So I think we need to acknowledge we've got a professional here, Mad Media, Edward Ash, and he's giving up his time to promote democracy. Let's acknowledge him. So I'm going to tap you on the shoulder. You'll come here. You need to be close to the microphone. You will be filmed. You've got 2 minutes. I understand after 1 minute you'll ring the bell. Well, that's not very loud. Okay, and the second one? And we'll be really ruthless that you won't speak over 2 minutes. Then we'll have up to 3 minutes for question time, and then if time permits, we'll open it up to the floor, and I'll come and tap you, and you'll come and speak now, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, as if you were listening, and very close to the microphone.
How do you do? My name is Rusty Kane. I'm standing for the Regional Council and the Hospital Board, Health and Environment, which I think would go together nicely. I am a biosoil consultant or soil consultant. I have 4 adult children and 2 grandchildren. And as a soil consultant, what I do is I help farmers and landowners with their soil and biomass, getting the soil right. I've done that for about 2 decades now, and I do land planning too. So we get a plan from a farmer of his land, and I send out some consultants to check bits and places where we think that he might do better with his land, and different types of fertilisers, where his trees go. Just basically, he wants to change the way he does things, and it's mainly to do with, I find, with all the time we do these things, it's usually to do with animal health, and they have huge vet bills, and they want to get back to doing something good for their land and their animals. Thank you. That's it.
Good evening, I'm Alan Murray. I'm actually from South Taranaki, so most of you won't be able to vote for me, which is a bit sad. But okay, I've got experience in accountancy, water treatment, and I was an agriculture consultant for 15 years until I had a very bad car accident. And so instead of coming back to Taranaki to expand my business, which was then in Northland, I had to change my ways. I had to sell that business. It took a long time to recover. And to feed my family, I did other things, including building, for the last 10 years. But anyway, my heart lies with the land. And
1 minute to go.
okay. And so I'm keen on looking after the environment, and I believe, I'm glad to hear Rusty might be doing the same thing. The advice that I gave was all to do with the environment, nature, as much as possible, with as much science as possible. And that's the way forward, I believe. I think we're still polluting our rivers. We can pat ourselves on the back as much as we like about the riparian planting, but there's a lot of work to do yet. And a lot of it's got to do with helping the farmers rather than policing them.
Remember, when the first bell goes, you've got a minute to go. So I don't know whether you robbed yourself of a minute, Rusty.
Yeah.
You're after good.
It doesn't matter.
My name's Bev Rain, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege for me to complete a 3-year term on the TRC, on the Consents and Regulatory Committee, Policy and Planning Committee, and represented the TRC on the Pukeiti Trust Fund. I spent 24 years working in local government in Taranaki in civil defence emergency management, and initially that started with the Taranaki County and the Nicholas City, and we added Clifton County, and so I know all about the counties as well. And anyway, from then on, when we had local government reform, the civil defence emergency management came under the TRC. Why I've mentioned this in this period in my working life, it has given me a very good insight into local government at all levels, both operationally and governance. As leader of this team, I made it my business every 3 years to conduct seminars for the councillors in all of the Taranaki councils, so they knew what they had to do in an emergency, and I reported to a committee on the TRC. On the other side of the table, well, I'm now on the other side of the table, I have enjoyed being part of the TRC at this level. Some of the highlights for me are towards the 2050 predator-free Taranaki, and that's going really, really well, and I think the schools, everybody are taking part in that as well. In terms of the ecological... Yeah.
Kia ora koutou, good evening, and thanks for tuning out, everybody. It's great to see you all here. My name's Chris Wilkes. I'm a North Ward candidate, so from Moko River to Stony River, just missing out town and whatnot. Look, what's motivated me to be a candidate this year is, for a long time I've been an environmental campaigner. I've done a lot of work with seabed mining to try and prevent an industry from attacking our seabed down off the coast of Patea and moving off town here. We've had some good results there, so that's been great. Look, I am adamant that the priorities of TRC need to be updated. I think we have major issues coming towards our communities, like the climate change issue. It's going to affect our farming community majorly, so we can't just carry on business as usual. We really need to support our agricultural sector in any way we can. I believe it's the TRC's role to do that. I would like to see more emphasis put on future-proofing for climate change and those kind of things, instead of the likes of the stadium. I was quite disappointed to hear back from my community that they're not happy about it. It seems like it may have been a rushed decision. However, I don't think it's too late to turn things around. I'm here to make a difference. Yeah, look, it's coming from Waitara. I grew up in Uruti, and to me, look, the heart of our land use is agriculture, so we'd be remiss to just bypass that, you know. I think it's really important that we, is that a bell? It was a bell, so thank you very much.
Kia ora tātou, ko Charlotte Littlewood toka ingoa. So I'm a current Taranaki Regional Councillor, elected to my first term 3 years ago. I'm also Deputy Chair of the Policy and Planning Committee at the Regional Council. And while it's not always been an easy ride, it's one I've immensely enjoyed. I've particularly enjoyed engaging with the community and understanding their views and how our decisions impact them. So a bit about my why. For me, this is a truly special region. I don't need to tell you that. We just look at our Monga to the sea and how spectacular it is. And it's about a region not just for this generation, but the generations to come. So how do we protect it, not just for our kids, but for our grandkids and their kids going forward? A little bit about me. I started my career in the public sector, doing policy advice for the UK governments and then the New Zealand governments. Then I moved into the corporate sector and I worked for PowerCo for 10 years, who are an infrastructure company with 2.5 billion of assets under management, and I was a senior manager there. More recently I moved into governance, so I'm a director of Port Taranaki on the WIP Council, and I'm also a chartered member of the Institute of Directors. Now I run my own consultancy business, specialising in corporate governance, policy and strategy advice to companies around New Zealand. I've also got a Master's in Finance, which is quite handy for reading accounts, and an honours degree in Economics and Politics. Is that 2 minutes?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, I'll just take a few minutes more, sorry, not a few minutes, but that would be really
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Yeah, so my priorities, they're on the flyer in front of you. It's about environmental education, prudent control over your expenditure, and accessible public transport. Thanks very much.
Just make sure you're close to that mic.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes? Yes. Thank you. Kia ora, my name is Alvisa Vanderleden, or Vanderleden if you are Dutch. I am 28 years old, even though I look like I've just left high school. That's because I'm half Filipino, half Irish, married to a Dutch Māori. So my first point on my little card that you might see around the place is representation at the table. And that's not just ethnically or community-wise, but also with my environmental science background and media studies background. I think those are skills that I could bring to the table, and being connected through different mediums, not just locally but throughout New Zealand as well. I think those are skills and networks that I could really use at the decision-making table. Evidence-based decision-making, really into science, love data, so I can ask the right questions when it comes to the science. Community collaboration, I think we should be supporting more environmental social enterprise structures that would benefit our farming communities and the wider community. Environmental sustainability, that speaks for itself, and continued economic success. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Thanks.
There is a Sir Donald, but he has, unfortunately, he has died. My name's Donald McIntyre. I live at Rarapico in Inglewood. I'm standing for the North Taranaki ward, which, like Chris said, goes from Mahokatina to the Stony River and through to Tariki. He forgot that important part. It's a very wide-ranging region. I farm at Tariki at Rarapico with my wife. We milk 320 odd cows. We live in the surrounds of Lake Rarapico. I have 2 children and 3 grandchildren. So I am deeply indebted that they have a future to live for. At the moment, the farming community is very under the pressure to perform, and the results that we see coming through the council demonstrate that they are performing. The water quality in Taranaki is second to none and is improving. The measures that are being put in place by this council are working and will continue to work. There is more work to do, there's no doubt about that, but that will be done as time progresses. The most proud things that I am of the regional council are the predator-free program and also the regional gardens, Tupari, Pukeiti and Hollard's Gardens. They are world leading, and with the work that's happening, particularly at Pukeiti at the moment, they will be truly outstanding and a great asset to this community. Thank you.
We're now going to enter into question time, which is up to 3 minutes before we open it to the public. And the open question will be as follows, and you can take all 3 minutes if you want to, you can take 2. The question would be, if you are an incumbent and you are on the Taranaki Regional Council, the open question is simply this: why did you vote for the repair and upgrade of Euro Stadium up to 50 million? Please explain. It's an open question. We are here to protect you. We're here to have a good discussion. If you are an aspirant, clearly you didn't make the decision. We want to hear from you, whether you agree with it, how you see things differently, the way forward. It's pretty open. So we're giving more time for this subject. The other part of your question time is you can reflect on what you think is the best thing that the Taranaki Regional Council has done in the last 3 years, and there's been some wonderful achievements. And then the last part, if you wish to address that in your 3 minutes, will be what are some of the challenges? What's an area where you can improve? I have 5 written responses from incumbents and aspirants, which I will read out as well. So I'm going to be a little bit more generous here because this is a very, very important issue. The public will have an opportunity, so no heckling. You can heckle me, I'm an Aussie, we're used to sledging. But please don't vent or heckle an aspirant or anyone who's an incumbent. So I'm going to start with you, Charlotte, if you could respond to that open question about Euro Stadium and the others. Thank you very much. You've got potentially up to 3 minutes, and it'd be good if you actually come here because you're being filmed. It just makes it easier.
So 3 minutes or more than that.
You can choose. You can choose one.
Bullet points.
Yep. I think 3 minutes. If you're a new Plymouth District Councillor aspirant, you'd be thrilled to have 3 minutes.
Thanks. So I'll start by talking about the stadium, because I'm sure that's the issue that a lot of people are here to hear about. So I just want to start with some context. From my perspective, it was by no means an easy decision to make. I recognise how many families and businesses are struggling out there and what rates increases mean to them. I also just wanted to say about the history of the TRC being a prudent council. We have some of the lowest rates of any council in the country. We've got no public debt. And also, in terms of the rates we've just passed, there was a 0% general rates increase. And I say that just to say that we're not a council that spends money unnecessarily. We have a very conservative approach to what we did. But from my perspective as a councillor, I had to look at all the evidence in front of me and say, what is the best interests? What is the best interests for the long term for the region?
1 minute or 2, just 2. 1 minute ago.
I think my whole 3 minutes might just be on the stadium.
That's okay.
So during consultation, I spoke to many people, and the clear message that came through just from speaking to people, and also from the consultation documents, is they wanted the stadium fixed, and they wanted the stadium to be something that could attract international events. There are people on both extremes as well, but the majority of people I spoke to said that. So leading down that decision is 36 million to fix both stands. Then what's been a bone of contention seems to be the 14 million of additional spending on top of that. So just to spend some time explaining what that is. So some of that's a contingency.
I'll give you another minute because clearly this is a very efficient clock here. Keep going.
There's also a range of things which are essential to have a stadium. So fixing the floodlights, 2.4 million. Fixing the pitch that's going to be wrecked. If we don't do that, we don't have a stadium. There's also a range of things where it's really important that we future-proof this stadium. The worst thing we can do as a council is spend a bunch of money fixing it, but then it becomes redundant and a white elephant out in West Town because we haven't invested for the future needs of events going forward. That's probably, is that my 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I could also talk about my greatest, what I think is the greatest achievement and what we could do better of, but maybe people could ask that in questions later.
Alan, again, if you just going through it again, we're giving 3 minutes, and Heather, you'll signal the bell that's 2 minutes, then it's 3, and if you're really in your stride, we will give you an extra minute, and we're going to open it up to the public, so we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Thank you, you're doing a great job, Elaine. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, I would do the minimum required to present the public with one wood stand and an embankment and leave the concrete terraces in place. I believe the actual ownership of the rugby stadium by the regional council was achieved by stealth, without ratepayer approval. I know that they got approval to fund it way back in 2001, but the next move should have been ratepayer consultation. The district council submissions represented thousands of ratepayers, and yet they were essentially ignored. The lack of public support for the TRC decision to spend 50 million is clear and suggests that the process was flawed, the consultation process. The tender process underway should be stalled until the up-and-coming council can address the issues again, taking all these things into account. That's my opinion. The greatest achievement, I suppose, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I suppose the progressing of the riparian planting scheme has been very good. But after a nice pat on the back, let's get on with doing the rest of the job, because the rivers are not clean. High end levels and soil runoff are a problem, and will take adjustment in farming practices and some time to get on top of it. Other achievements I'll no doubt learn at the table. I believe the TRC should play a role in helping farmers understand nature and reverse some poor farming practices. We're better to take the lead rather than wait with concern for central government regulations. So that too. Dairy herd stocking rates are often too high. The average age of herds is very low, maybe 4 or 5. Therefore, production per cow is too low. They don't reach full production potential until 7 or 8. Consequently, the average age of our dairy herds should be 9 or 10. Soil compaction occurs, especially with large numbers of cows on wet soils. This slows the natural nitrogen cycle. Often too much nitrogen fertiliser is then used. The quality of the food grown is often reduced. High-producing dairy cows need a high level of nutrition. When they have to compete for tucker, this often leads to insufficient diet, meaning production stress, and this prevents them from getting in calf. I think it's a vicious circle, and we need to be helping the farmers through that.
Thank you, Alan. So you get a bell at 2 minutes and 3, and if you're in your stride, we can give you a merciful, flexible extra minute. So far, everyone's been brilliant.
The first thing I'd like to say about Yarrow Stadium and why I voted for it, the resolution of the TRC, which was agreed, was up to $50 million. That has never been conveyed by the media in this province since after that day. It's always been 50 million, 50 million, 50 million. And it is up to 50 million. And that wasn't the only reason that I voted for it, but after, as Charlotte has said, after we listened to all the things that were going on and looking at it, I personally didn't feel that Yarrow Stadium should sit like a big bog hole up there for the next 20 years and nobody do anything about it. I've come from a sporting background, not necessarily rugby, and I believe that it has the capacity, and we should be doing something with it to provide for the community of Taranaki, and so that's why I voted for it. Now you asked about some of the other things that we did. In terms of I started before, the ecological health of our waterways, and the reduction in bacteria levels, we have near the best results ever, and NIWA has confirmed that fencing and planting our waterways is a direct factor in the latest monitoring figures.
Minute to go. If you
Oh, let's go. Okay. I think Donald mentioned our gardens, and with being on the Pukeeti Trust Fund, and he's on the Pukeeti Trust, we're the sort of true Pukeeti people, so I do have to say something about that. We have world-class gardens in Taranaki, which are under the Taranaki Regional Council umbrella, namely Pukeeti, Hollards and Tūpari. And the Rainforest Centre at Pukeeti, which has been put in there last year by the Regional Council and opened there, and the visitor numbers are just soaring throughout the province. Okay?
Thank you very much. 2-minute bell, 3-minute bell, and a flexible extra minute if you need it.
Right, the old stadium saga. I'm fielding calls as if I made the decision myself and I wasn't there to do so. However, I maintain that it is a process issue. I think the consultation process that has been undertaken traditionally is no longer robust enough. It's not actually modernised. We're looking at adverts in a daily newspaper which has got a readership that's just declining majorly. So I'm not sure that enough of the public are actually getting notified of the submission period. It was a 5-week submission period, which is quite long, and I'm aware that it was beyond the requirement, the legal requirement for consultation, so there's a little bit extra done. The fact that usually there's only a few dozen submissions to these kind of things, and this time there was 570 odd, I think that is also an indication that there's not enough public having their say around submission period, around the submission process. So given that now everyone seems to be well awake to the issue, I would say that it would be a good idea to revisit that submission process. I know it's dragging everyone through the whole thing all over again and wading through a heap of submissions, but I think isn't that the actual foundation of democracy is hearing from the public, and our public representatives are there to represent the wishes of the public. We did a little exercise, hands up, who wanted to spend the $50 million out in Waitara. No one put their hands up. The fact was that there was only 2 or 3 people in the room that had actually made a submission. So I felt sorry for the councillors not having the mandate from the public to actually reduce our ask on this structure. Isn't it traditionally on a bit of a swampland? Isn't there not enough parking for big international events anyway?
A minute to go if you need it.
So, I'm not sure that the actual area in the stadium is fit for purpose for a big international stadium. Are we kind of overreaching our actual needs? Are our priorities in place? These are the questions I think we need to be asking of our council, and extending that submission period would have allowed for that. So I'd really like to see a hold on all rates take around that issue, around the stadium. I'd like to see a hold on all action around the stadium and a reopening of the submission period so that everyone who now is engaged is able to have their say. So that would be my solution.
Thanks, Chris. And just a reminder, when you hear the bell, you don't have to stop. That's signalling 2 minutes, then it'll be 3, and we have a flexible additional 4th minute if you need it.
Well, the stadium issue, I'm with Councillor Brown and Mayor Ross Dunlop and their concerns with it. I think we need to revisit it, and I think the Regional Council needs to do it because we need to be together on this, the whole community, and the South and the Central and New Plymouth. And I don't see anyone agreeing with this, or I haven't heard from anyone. I get a lot of complaints from the South. They don't even want to pay the rates at all. They reckon they don't even go there. So I think the Regional Council needs to come back to us, because I know a lot of people are saying that 33 million is acceptable, but the 50 million, and it might be more, is not. And that's all I'll say about that at the moment. The Regional Council are doing a good job with their riparian growing strips, because they don't bash the farmer and make him do it. They go along and educate the farmer, and the farmers are doing it themselves, and I think that's a great initiative. The problem I've had over the last couple of decades, and I've been around all the councils and put in submissions, is that they need to do more. They haven't done more. The riparian planting only can actually get overloaded. You've got to do something on the land as well. The good thing is that Fonterra is starting to come on board, and they're doing that all farmers need a land management plan. There's only about 24% doing it now, but they want to get to 100%, and that will help greatly. Also, because I'm a biosoil consultant, if you get the soil right,
2 minutes.
it takes care of the nitrogen. But what other people aren't talking about is all the chemicals in the system, and that goes into the water system as well. The good thing about it for Taranaki is that within 24 hours or so, it's all out into the ocean because it's fast flowing, all the rivers. I mean, our rivers can be very bad, but we don't know it. But then it's someone else's problem, isn't it? Once it goes out to the ocean, it's someone else's problem. We've got to fix it on the land, but we've got to do it together. We've got to work together, and our farming was the biggest industry before the oil and gas, and it will be after oil and gas, so let's look after it. 3 minutes.
I have 5 apologies, and one of them was featured in the Taranaki Daily News, I think on Monday, complaining that the Taranaki Regional Councillors weren't getting a look in at the candidates meeting, and I drove all the way down to Hawa and I video interviewed Councillor Neil Walker and Alan Murray, so there'd be editorial balance. So very, very soon I will read the answer from Neil Walker, my apologies, Neil Walker, not Neil Whittaker. So this is from Craig Williamson, who is on the Taranaki Regional Council. He's seeking re-election for the New Plymouth constituency. These are his comments about Yarrow Stadium. I'll just read them to you. We made a difficult decision that was based on all the information and the feedback we had received at the time. We cannot walk away from the stadium, and we should not take the easy way out and hand it back to its former owners, current operators and managers, the New Plymouth District Council, because if we did that, then it would most likely just sit there as it is for years and years, only to deteriorate even further, and then like the occasionally muted TSB Stadium and the Todd Energy Aquatic Centre upgrade, nothing would happen, which is a very cheap way to operate. But it's not great for the people who live here to use and attend those facilities. Since we took the decisive action, this is again from Craig Williamson, moving forward with the stadium repair including essential upgrades, it has become an even hotter topic than it was at the time, with a lot of people now telling us that we got it wrong, and that although they didn't put in a submission during the consultation period, they now either want no stadium at all, want something quite different, or want us to repair it on how it was in 2017 and leave it with no budget for essential upgrades such as lights or a pitch to play on, and in brackets, the existing one will be ruined by heavy machinery used for the repair. So this is Craig Williamson again on the Yarrow Stadium. So my thoughts now, moving forward, are that for our province we need a fixed, fit for purpose and functional Yarrow Stadium that will be used by multiple sports for a variety of events as soon as practicable and as economically as possible. Therefore, with that in mind, my pledge as a councillor is to do whatever it takes to make sure that is how this unfortunate situation ultimately unfolds. And I'd invite Donald, if you could come to the lectern. Thank you very much.
The stadium, as the other participants have said, has probably been the top hot topic. We would be damned if we did and damned if we didn't. We had a stadium that was not fit for purpose any longer for reasons beyond our control. So something had to be done. Unfortunately, it cost money to do that. And like it or not, that's where we got to. None of us like spending that sort of money, but I'd like to think that we've invested that money wisely, and we'll, like I think Bev said, we'll be making sure that that money doesn't go over budget, and certainly we get our value for money. what's been forgotten in a lot of this argument is that there was a lot of unbudgeted for maintenance that was required in the lifetime of the stadium, which has not been done. The lights are 20 years old and they were end of life. They were even a hazard in some cases. So those need to be replaced. Mr Barnes has said that there are cheaper alternatives than what was quoted. I would like to see those options taken up. The turf, that needs to be replaced. Whether it costs the $2.3 million that they've put in the budget, we'd like to think we can do a little bit better than that. But those are the things that we needed to work with at the time. There are lots of things you could keep talking about the stadium, but I'd like to move on because life does move on and we face a lot bigger challenges in front of us as a council and as a community. And that is the fact that the government is going to bring in rules which will make farming as in its present state uneconomic and unviable. If we do not challenge those, because we have some very robust science to support the way in which the environment is being managed and enhanced in Taranaki. We've got an extensive amount of monitoring being taking place over a long period of time, which tells us what's happening and where it's going to in the future. The future will not be as you know it now. You think the lack of oil and gas in this country, in this community, has made an impact. Well, if these rules come into bear, then the farming community will fall to its knees, and so will this community. So I think that's a far bigger challenge we face than anything like the stadium. Thank you.
This is from Councillor Neil Walker, who was in the Daily News, saying that the debate had been one-sided, and he's chairing a meeting, so it's not like he's full of hot air, and he has sent a very fulsome answer, and I will read it, and I'll get you to put the timer on it, Elaine, so he doesn't have an unfair advantage. This is what Neil Walker wrote about Yarrow Stadium. I begin with what I would like to address the Yarrow Stadium issue. In my time on the Taranaki Regional Council, the Yarrow Stadium has been a difficult issue. It is and remains a fantastic facility, and I go regularly to it with my son and grandchildren who live down the street. In fact, I would suggest that the delight in attending is shared by a silent majority who sidle up to you after heated public meetings and tell you just that. The truth is that structurally and practically there is nothing wrong with the stadium. Do I get an amen from you, Morris West? But like freshwater policy in New Zealand, one size must fit all, and the public of Taranaki and everyone else must pay for the Christchurch and Wellington earthquake standards and regulations, he goes on. Frankly, no regional councillor wants or wanted to spend any money on Yarrow Stadium, but like all owners of claimed earthquake risk buildings, we are legally obliged to do something. The assessment of what was necessary to achieve the earthquake requirements were very carefully made, and just like any householder who would, when doing repairs and other necessaries, long as overdue modifications were included. Once that was done, it was put to a series of options and wide consultation, which attracted 570 submissions, was begun. The rest is history. And he closes here. Leadership sometimes is trying to find a solution when none can be found that satisfies everyone. In the end, that is the pain of leadership in the crisis. And I'm going to ask Alvisa if you could come to the lectern.
So obviously this Yellow Stadium issue has been a huge can of worms, and it's been really interesting, and I appreciate all the restanding councillors for explaining your justifications behind the decisions that have been made, and I appreciate that this whole issue is not black and white. No matter what side of the argument you're standing on, the decision has been made, and if the opportunity for a review does come up, I would support statistical analysis from the consultation process. I support Chris's suggestion moving forward. How can we make better decisions that cover the general public in a more fair way? So I think problem solving from here forward is what we need to focus on. but I do support, if the opportunity does come up, that we do look into it a lot further. In terms of what Taranaki Regional Council has achieved in the last few years, I really appreciate that there has been a huge emphasis on environmental education. So we have Enviro Schools, which we were kind of one of the last regions to pick up on that opportunity and educate our younger people, because this is the planet that we're handing over to them. So they're starting to learn how it works from a young age, which is really exciting for me as an environmental educator. And also, I think that, we have an amazing education officer as well. So I really support more financial support and funding more of those initiatives, and that comes under the environmental social enterprise structures that I briefly mentioned. And with our gardens, I love our gardens, but also I think we need to make them more accessible for our wider community locally, not just to our tourists and wealthier people who can actually access them.
This is from Michael Joyce, who is on the Taranaki Regional Council for the South Taranaki constituency. It's short and succinct. He writes, I voted for the 48 million stadium repair and upgrade with an additional 2 million contingency allowance. This is what is required to deliver on the agreed Yarrow Stadium vision of an excellent regional stadium that regularly hosts national and international sports and entertainment events. This is from aspirant, let's just find it here, this is from aspirant Bob Warren, who is standing for the Taranaki Regional Council New Plymouth constituency, and this is what he writes about Yarrow Stadium. I do not support the expense of 50 million for the repair and upgrade of Yarrow Stadium. I could agree to rebuild one covered stand with better facilities with a budget of say 25 million. We do need a stadium for rugby supporters. I have noticed as a volunteer Rotary Club usher, crowds at most Taranaki Bulls games, 6 a season, over the last couple of seasons have averaged around 3,000 spectators. I have no faith in the Bell report and projections regarding future value of the stadium to the Taranaki economy and community. To spend 50 million to attract the All Blacks to have a full stadium once every 4 years seems to be absurd. And I think there's just the one more to share. And then I've got some just quick rapid fire questions and we'll open it up to the floor. We're very efficient. We've been going 45 minutes. And I want to congratulate all the aspirants to the TRC for cooperating. This is from Michael Swift, who aspires to be on the Taranaki Regional Council. I think it's for the New Plymouth constituency. He writes, okay, the stadium is still front of mind for many voters and residents. I've been contemplating my thoughts and I've mentioned a preference to being bold as opposed to recycling the current stadium. My question to the region is it the cost that is the issue or the fact that the current proposal falls short of expectations? A bold investment decision such as historic ones like let's build a coastal walkway should be posed to the region. Any investment needs to provide a return to the wider region. When looking at a bold stadium construction in recent times in New Zealand, such as the Forsyth Bar Stadium in Dunedin, is the obvious comparison. The economic benefits of a covered stadium are positive. The cost of that facility was around about 200 million. This facility is for far more multiple purpose. So is it the stadium we want, or is it the far widening reaching and the overall multi-sports facility that we aspire to have? How do we cater for all sporting codes? How do we fund such a facility? And that's pretty much the gist of that. So I'm going to ask all the people on the Taranaki Regional Council if you could just lean forward to your microphones and almost kiss them. They're live. So this is if you're on the TRC, Donald, if you can lean forward and just about kiss them. These are just some of the things that have been in the letters to the editor, and I just wanted to get a very quick response, and then we'll open it to the well, you should rejoice, because my editorial policy has been supporting you, Donald. If you read the Taranaki Daily News, that's why I was surprised that Heather asked me to moderate the meeting. But there you go. All right, here's the first one. Did the Taranaki Regional Council, we'll start with you, Donald, make the decision about the repair and upgrade of Euro Stadium behind closed doors? Close to the microphone.
Definitely not. It was in public meeting. Unfortunately, most of the submitters that had been present had left by that stage.
All right, while you're there, and then we'll do this for all the aspirants, what do you make of the Gordon Brown and Hugh Barnes petition? 5,200 people want the costs capped at around 33 million. What do you make of the petition?
An interesting situation, but I don't give it a lot of weight at this stage.
All right, Bev Run, if you could lead forward. Did the TRC make the decision behind closed doors? And what do you make of the Gordon Brown Hugh Barnes petition? Just quickly. Leaning forward to the microphone so we can hear you.
No, it wasn't behind closed doors. We'd had the submissions and everybody from there had left. So it was just us left, but they could have stayed.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the Gordon Brown Hugh Barnes petition, 5,200 signatures.
I'm kind of over it, actually. Yeah.
Kind of over it. All right, Charlotte, I'll get you to lean forward. At last Wednesday's Taranaki Daily News mayoral debate, the mayor, Neil Holdham, said that the TRC wanted a $160 million stadium upgrade. Was he telling porkies? Were you aware of that? Your thoughts? Did the TRC want a $160 million Yarrow Stadium as quoted by the Mayor of the New Plymouth District Council?
My understanding is we went into this with open eyes. So we sat down with MPDC and we said, what's in the best interests of the region? Is it from one extreme just selling the whole stadium and going to Inglewood? Or at the other extreme, building a phenomenal multi-million complex at the stadium? And we started with that discussion, and then we moved forward with MPDC to those options.
So just in terms of yes and no, at one stage was it conceptually floated that it might have been 160 million? Otherwise,
Well, that was one of the.
otherwise our mayor
There was a range of
porkies.
options that ranged from
Right,
6 million
okay,
to.
so he's just talking about an option, no problem. And while you're there, Charlotte, people are amazed that the Taranaki Regional Council's decision for the repair and upgrade of the stadium was unanimous. Was that really the case? Was it really unanimous?
Well, there was one councillor who didn't turn up to the meeting, but just to put some, we had a really intense discussion around this around the council table because we recognised what a contentious decision it was, and there were wide-ranging views around the table, and we debated all the issues and came up with something where both sides compromised. We took 7 million worth of projects off the original proposal. Remember, in the consultation it was a 55 million proposal. So yes, it was unanimous. Yes, there was debate and there were different views around the
All
table.
right, thank you. And just we'll get through these and then we'll open it up to the public. This is for you, Donald and Bev. Why haven't the Taranaki Regional Councillors been more proactive in the media of explaining and defending the decision? I think there's just been the one letter from David McLeod and a very excellent update guide on the website, which I'd recommend you have a look at, which is about Yarrow Stadium. Donald, why haven't you guys been writing letters to the editor and each explaining why you voted the way you did?
I think you probably highlighted that. There's a very good explanation there put out by the staff. And it gets a bit futile when people keep, to put it bluntly, tell porkies and don't tell the truth. A lot of what has been put out in the public arena doesn't reflect anything like what is going to happen or what happened in history. Like Charlotte has said, it was a true discussion and things were pushed about and new ideas come forward. So there's, and despite what Chris has said, there was full consultation in all forms of media, whether it be Facebook or Instagram or whatever else you want to put it out there. It was out there and it was open for people to do. And like I say, 570 odd submissions. That's as many submissions as we've ever had to anything before. So there is merit to the fact that people did get engaged.
All right, just quickly to you, Bev. Do you really believe in your heart that Yarrow Stadium is a multi-purpose facility? Isn't it just really for rugby? Come on. Do you really believe that Yarrow Stadium was multi-purpose, even with the repair and upgrade of 50 million?
It's always had that title, but I have to say it basically has been a rugby stadium. But I think with what we're talking about now, I think it's more evident than ever that it needs to be multi-sport and events. It doesn't have to be all sport. There can be millions of things you can do up there with children and all sorts of things. So I don't think that, I just think rugby's just a small part of it, that's all.
All right, I'm giving the aspirants an opportunity to respond, maybe 30 or 40 seconds. Clearly that's an in-house question for the people on council.
Brian, rugby is a cornerstone tenant, so without rugby as a cornerstone tenant, you wouldn't have the need for a stadium like that. So with the cornerstone tenant of rugby and paying the majority of the bills, then you can add around that, and that's what...
All right, a brief comment from the aspirants about those questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor.
Firstly, I'd just like to say I was one of the 5,000 people who signed that petition, and I'm absolutely appalled that it's not, that you're over it. You know, you don't want to hear from the ratepayers. I'm a ratepayer. I'm burdened for 25 years because of a decision you made. Now, good on Gordon and his mate for going out there and doing the legwork and hearing from 5,000 people, because that's almost 10 times more than you guys were able to achieve in your submission process.
All right, any of the other aspirants? Quick comment?
Yeah. Well, I agree with Chris, but we have a councillor here, Murray Chong, at the moment, and I'd like to know, did they consult with you as a council properly?
No, that's invalid because we're asking questions of you and you're making a comment. Elvisa, a quick response and we'll open it up to the floor. Just leaning forward. You don't have to press the button.
I pretty much said what I thought. I don't know how much, more. Everyone said, I agree with parts of both arguments.
Sure.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yes, Alan.
I'd just like to confirmation of how much approximately Taranaki Rugby Union pay per year. Donald, are you able to give that figure?
No, I don't.
All right, that's
I
a
believe
technical
it's
question.
$27,000 a year, which on a $50 million spend after all the other money that's already got millions and millions that has gone in, it is a pathetic return. It doesn't justify it.
All right, let's open it to the floor. Questions, not statements. We don't want you to vent. All right, this is just a question in less than 20 seconds. Remember the Merrill debate, the 3-page. So a quick question. Have you got a question, Max?
I think you know I do. I think I could probably get you all to agree on one thing.
Your question?
We're all in this together, right?
Yeah. What's your question?
My question is, without stealing Robert Martin's thunder tomorrow, do you think this should be run jointly by the TRC and EPDC, or should you do it alone as an individual council?
All right, quick response from everyone. Let's just rapidly go around, leaning forward. Should it be a joint operational thing between the TRC and the New Plymouth District Council? Bev, and we'll quickly go around. If you don't want to answer.
Well, there's a Taranaki Stadium Trust, which has members of New Plymouth District and the TRC, so that's part of it anyway. And the TRC does one portion of things, and the District Council does the everyday bookings and things like that at the stadium. So we are working.
So what do you favour? Do you think it should be joint or just as it is? That's what we would need to... Joint. Alan, quickly, the question, your response?
I'm going to represent the ratepayers of South Taranaki, and we don't really want to pay for a New Plymouth Rugby Stadium.
All right, Chris, the question is, do you favour the NPDC and the TRC jointly together? Or quickly, you go around the table.
I favour whatever becomes the most economic for our ratepayers and values their dollar.
All right, Donald, the status quo, or is there anything to be gained by this floated idea from aspirant for the Mayoralty for New Plymouth?
A joint approach that we've had up till now has worked very well, but the District Council has pulled away from managing the rebuild, so that falls upon the Regional Council to do that.
All right, you don't have to respond to this if it's not for you. Rusty, less than 20 seconds, what do you reckon?
I think the New Plymouth District Council should take it on. It's the $4 million debt is what stopped it apparently while they made the decision.
All right, so you're going for the
And
MPDC.
I also like to know, is that $4 million debt still there?
All right, Charlotte?
It's a partnership. It's always been a partnership since the TRC became the owner, and I think it's worked well until this point.
Not anymore.
All right, you got anything to add on this? You can pass, we won't think lowly of you if you want to pass. Joint, all right. You got a question, Murray?
No
preamble.
Yeah, just get. It's a little.
One,
two. It's a little bit about the stadium, but my view was.
Your question.
I have to get to this. Everyone wanted 33. You decided to go 50. What do you think of the idea, and why did you not think about it? We grabbed that extra 14, committed to port development, recreational, and then we would have got $14 million from the Regional Development Fund. Once it was built, we got another $10 million from the sale of the berths. Now, to me, that's really investing money and getting another $24 million for the same amount of money. So would you support that, and why have you not looked at a feasibility study to prove this?
All right, there's quite a bit there. Anyone want to respond to that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Murray. I think they should do that. And we've got to look at all options now, because money's tight, ratepayers haven't got much more to give. And there's other sports too that need money, and now where are they going to get their money? It's all just too
Anyone
much.
else would like to respond to what Murray said, his question?
So your question's relating to a marina development down at the port, I presume, Murray? So I haven't seen any kind of business case that carries those figures.
That's what I'm asking. Why have you not done it?
So the ports have been looking at how to get the best utilisation of the port land, which includes how the, I guess, Breakwater Bay is used, and we're going through that process.
Anyone else want to respond to
Yeah, what's it got to do with South Taranaki, please?
Well, that's your answer to that. Here's a question coming from Annika.
Hey guys, I just want to ask those of you who did vote for the stadium, I'm sorry to bring it up again, but I'm going to talk about a multi-purpose as well. Those of you who voted for it, do you guys think that it is fair that the ratepayers of Taranaki pay $50 million for a stadium, or potentially up to $50 million for a stadium, as well as then whatever it's going to cost for a multi-purpose sporting facility for our region as well, on top of that? And how fair is that in regards to all the other things like water and culture and arts and everything else that our community needs? Is that fair?
From my perspective, New Plymouth District Council, how they decide to set their rates, what they want to spend it on, that's nothing I can control. That's their decisions as the elected representatives. Myself, I'm elected to the Regional Council. I have to make the decision on the stadium with the best information in front of me. So information I took into account was the Bell report that said that the stadium's brought 100 million of benefit to our region, and that will continue to grow in the future. The other information is that the stadium in 2016 had 128 different functions and events in it. It provided a much wider scheme than is just rugby games.
All right, so we're asking the incumbents who voted for it, is it fair? Just briefly, Donald, and then we'll hear from Beck.
Just dittoing with what Charlotte has said, how MPDC develops their cultural and infrastructure is their plan, but it was deemed a long time ago that the Yarra Stadium Rugby Park, as it used to be known, was a regional facility, not a district facility, so hence the Regional Council has come on board with the funding. So unless somebody can convince us, and that's an open debate, that there is a regional facility that needs to be funded for whatever reason, then that's where it
Bev,
goes.
is the decision fair from Annika? Your response?
You mean our decision?
Annika asked the question about, do you believe it's fair? So you can either say yes or no, or just elaborate for 20 or 30 seconds, and then we'll hand the microphone over to Colin Bell.
I'm very aware that there is another group of sporting people that are wanting to have a sports hub in New Plymouth. Well, I think in New Plymouth. And I'm aware also that there's another group coming out of Stratford who want an event centre. So we've now got three, basically, that people are talking about. So I think we need to, as regional councillors, sort out the Yarrow Stadium thing. And then I was at a meeting last week with another hat on with the sports hub thing. And some of the people are just talking pie in the sky stuff. And I don't know where they think it's going to be funded from, lottery probably. And then there's this other event centre as well. So, and all good things, but how can we do them all?
Thank you. Here's a question from Colin Bell. You'll be pleased to know that my question is to do with wetlands, change of subject. So, are the candidates in favour of developing or assisting farmers to develop new wetlands or letting some portions of their farm revert to wetlands, which will have an environmental benefit for the whole province, I believe? All right, quick response from everyone about wetlands.
Yeah.
Wasn't Yarrow's built on a wetland? Hey. No, look, I'm all in favour of wetlands. I understand there's an economic impact there, and I wonder how we're going to buffer that for our farming community. It'd be great if central government was able to pocket some money to able to put some land aside.
The Regional Council already does that through its key native ecosystem, so there's already funds there to assist the development of and retention of wetlands, etc.
And I'll just add that wetlands protection is a major issue across the country, and the Ministry of the Environment and their consultation on freshwater.
Anyone not proactive and keen to support wetlands that wants to speak? All right, Morris.
Let's get back to the elephant in the room. You've said 6 million up to 270 million. What about the 0 million? Waikato have announced that they have exactly the same problem. They expect theirs to be earthquake prone, but they will manage it by not using it during all the other hours that it's not used. So why can't we do exactly the same and use the stadium for those 2 hours a week that it might get used during the season?
All right, so Morris is referencing Waikato Stadium and how it relates to us. I'm not quite sure I understand it, but you seem to, Charlotte.
My perspective is, as a councillor, it's like being a governor of a company. I have a health and safety obligation. The stadium is a place where people work. I will not ask people to work in a situation that has been earthquake rated that could kill them. Okay, that's the bottom line. Waikato Regional Council, I saw the comments in the paper. I was very surprised by that. I don't think they've actually voted on what they're going to do because they haven't had their full earthquake reports. When they do have those reports, I'll be interested to see the outcome.
All right, this is about Yarrow Stadium. Anyone want to respond?
So therefore, we shouldn't be driving home tonight.
That is the reality of
It's
life.
about health and safety obligations and minimising risk.
All right, we've got a question here from an aspirant, free ad for someone who desires to be the mayor of New Plymouth. You might as well mention your name, sir. That's a plug. We'll get you on the video. Your question.
Yeah, Greg McKay. Yes, I'm running for Mayor and Councillor. I'm not up to speed with it, so I've just been at a meeting from Mafia School with all the
Questions, sir.
units there. But my question is to do with the Yarrow Stadium. Alright? Why can't, because we know that the Territory Jockey Club are nearly ending their lease or whatever up there.
Your question.
Question is, why can't that stadium become Yarrow Stadium without spending the 50 million up Rugby Park?
Is your question related to why have we not developed a big multi-sport
Why?
complex that encompasses everything at the racecourse?
What I'm saying is that it could become available. So instead of building a new $50 million complex at Rugby Park, why can't we utilise the stadium up there at racecourse? So why can't we utilise that instead of wasting 50 million?
So where the racecourse is in the TSB stadium, is that an alternative?
So just, I think my fellow councillors probably expand on too. So just to be clear, as a regional council, we can only go into so much debt. So we can only fund up to 55 million of debt. So we can't do anything that is above that amount. If we did, we'd have to rely on other funding partners, of which describing what I think you're saying is, it would require New Plymouth District Council to come on board. My understanding is we had that discussion with them, they weren't interested, so where we are.
Any other...
And the planning process for a redevelopment of the racecourse, as much as there's a lot of concept plans out there, there's nothing in depth, and so you could still be talking 10 years away before anything happens, and so you've got the option of fixing what we've got and progressing, or just letting it stay like somebody else mentioned.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we could probably wrap this up at 1:45. I promised it wouldn't be longer than 90 minutes. We did it brilliantly. So we've got another question over here. No. I just want to represent Murray. Let's ask this one again.
Before you wrap it up, I think you people are very worried about the Yarra Stadium. Why are you not worried about what the government regulations that are going to come in shortly, if they do come through the process? They will affect you far more than what the Yarra Stadium will, and they will affect the environment in a far bigger way.
All right, this is Kabaji.
Kia ora. Us people are concerned because it's put us in debt for the next 25 years. And it is our next generation and the generation after that. Don't you have a conscience?
Is that your question?
That is my question.
Do you have a conscience?
Do you have a conscience of the debt that you've put our ratepayers in and our next generations?
All right, depending on how you want to do the grammar. Do you have a conscience or don't you have a conscience? I think the question is explicitly clear. Quick reaction from the incumbent.
Certainly we have a conscience, and that's why we challenged for it so long. Do you, don't you? And if we hadn't done the redevelopment, there would be an equally large number of people here saying that we were derelict in our duty and letting it go to wreck and ruin.
Any other incumbents that want to respond to that?
Yeah, I spoke earlier about what a difficult decision it was and the impact it has on ratepayers, so I'm not going to repeat that there, but I did talk about that.
All right, just want to go back to Murray's question. I think he was sort of teasing, saying, has the Taranaki Regional Council ever thought of doing a feasibility study or thinking outside of the square to maybe bring vibrancy and do something more with the breakwater area apart from the commercial Port Taranaki? Anyone want to respond to that?
I think it's a great idea.
You're an aspirant. Anyone that's on the council want to respond to that? Murray obviously thinks there's potential there that hasn't been tapped. Is that just dreaming?
Can I talk?
Yes, go for it.
I've been in Tauranga for 6 years, and they've got 2 marinas in the harbour there, and I don't see why we can't do something like that here.
So you could see it working?
I do.
Can I just say that we have to be very conscious of the way the ocean works. It's a very strong ocean, and there's constantly rock wall development, and I run a program called Finding Little Blue, and personally I have a strong connection to wildlife, balanced ecosystems, and so we have to, I think, with the way the world's moving, society's values are moving, we should be getting more creative in how we utilise these spaces. I have a pretty good working relationship with the port. I think they're doing a great job in this space, working with the community to protect what is there already. But in terms of the future, I think there's a lot of innovative, creative initiatives that are developing in other parts of not only New Zealand but the world that we could be utilising.
So in respect to what Murray's advocating, you have reservations about that. Okay. Anyone else?
My thoughts are, apart from the fact, like Charlotte said earlier on, we actually haven't seen any detailed analysis to suggest whether it's viable or what the costs are likely to be.
Bill report 2006.
But you've got to remember that we're on the west coast, and it's a lot different to Tauranga, where they have a lot calmer seas. Our seas, it's not uncommon for the ships that are moored at the wharves have to put to sea with a swell coming through, because it's untenable for them to stay there. So the challenges for a marina would be quite strong.
Right, this is a question from Heather Lewis. I don't think there's a conflict of interest. Your question.
Thank you. When you decided to put everybody in this region into debt
Your question.
for the next 25 years, what made you decide on a flat rate
Or a targeted rate.
targeted rate, so that everyone, even in a small house on a low income, paid the same as someone on a 6-figure salary in a big house?
All right, the rationale behind the targeted rate, without getting too technical, as we bring the meeting to a close.
Basically, by having a targeted rate, everyone pays exactly the same whether you are rich or poor. I agree, and that's the whole thing. So that there is no good or bad. It's just everyone is treated the same, which is how life should be. When you flush your toilet, the same stuff goes down the toilet as everyone else's. So the costs are exactly the same.
It's inequitable. Unless you're...
I'd consider that to be just spreading the misery in a nice broad layer. I have a question for our councillors, and that is there a culture of saying yes at your meetings? Because I've attended several, and there's always all in favour, yes, no one seems to oppose. Is that the culture?
That's inadmissible, really, because I'm the moderator, and I think we have intimated what the issue is. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring it to a close. An efficient, short meeting is a good one. I want you to put your hands together for the aspirants for the Taranaki Regional Council. I've been in media for 20 years, and generally journalists prefer reporting on the New Plymouth District Council because it's easy to report on. There's a lot of, not always, but toy throwing. The issues aren't as complex, and sometimes to report on the TRC you need to know about the environment and science. But one good thing about the Yarrow Stadium controversy and debate, you guys are very much in. And I think with climate change, this is just my opinion, and with the way the world's heading, it could be that in the next 3 or 5 years the TRC will be setting the agenda and dominating the news. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Hey, let's put our hands together for our amazing timekeeper, Elaine James. The man who's got a business, he's got the 2 huge electronic billboards. The New Plymouth District Council's approved a 3rd one. And Sam, they've been showing your advertising on these electronic billboards.
Thanks, Ed.
Let's put our hands together for Mad Media. Tonight's meeting will be released on YouTube, so it wasn't a waste of money. Let's acknowledge the man who's come the farthest or the furthest, Alan Murray, who had a letter in the paper today. Let's acknowledge the incumbents, because it's not easy turning up, because you know you're going to get it in the neck about Yarrow Stadium. Let's put our hands together for those people who are in the And just a closing thought. It's been interesting for me because I just made a decision for the sake of being a lone voice. I think I've written more letters to the Daily News supporting the Taranaki Regional Council and the 50 million. It's been a very lonely experience for me. And that's just, I felt that I needed to do that for democracy. I realised the TRC, we're going to get David McLeod, and they're going to do things in a unified way, and that's their prerogative. So I've written letters supporting them, but it's been a very lonely experience as I walk the streets of New Plymouth. And Gordon Brown and I have had a good stoush. I've repudiated him, he's repudiated me, but I'm envious because his letters are more eloquent than me. But that's the way it goes. Look, it's been a great night. Thank you to Jenny. Democracy has prevailed. Drive safely, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming.